I pretended to have a stroke and lost everything overnight. My cardiologist son said he was too busy with a conference. My attorney daughter said her husband didn't want drama in their home. But my youngest, a night shift nurse who barely makes rent, she took me in without hesitation. She sold her car to pay for my therapy, and when my lawyer walked through that door with the truth, the look on their faces was something I will carry with me forever. I'm truly grateful you're here with me today. Before we continue, take a moment to tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice matters, and I read more comments than you might think. Just a quick note before we begin. Some elements of this story have been fictionalized for storytelling and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people or places is coincidental, but the message itself is completely real. The silence of my lake house was deafening that November evening. Not the peaceful kind of quiet that comes with retirement and reflection, but the hollow kind that reminds you of everyone who should be there but isn't. I stood at the window overlooking Lake Tahoe, watching the last light fade behind the Sierra Nevada mountains. 64 years of building something, and this magnificent view was all I had to show for it. My wife Grace would have loved this sunset. She always said the best part of success wasn't the money or the recognition. It was having someone to share the view with. She'd been gone 8 years now, and some evenings I still turned to tell her about my day, forgetting for just a moment that her chair would be empty. My name is Walter Brennan. I built Brennan Medical Supply from a single warehouse in Sacramento into a company worth $93 million. I employed over 2,000 people across 12 states. By every measure society uses to define success, I had achieved it all. But that evening, standing alone in a house big enough for a family that never visited, I understood something my accountants could never calculate. I was wealthy beyond measure and utterly bankrupt in everything that mattered. The phone rang at 6:47 p.m. My eldest, Michael, the one I'd put through Johns Hopkins Medical School, $400,000 for his education alone. He'd become a cardiologist. Successful, respected, everything a father dreams of for his son. Dad, glad I caught you. His voice was clipped, efficient, the voice of a man fitting a phone call between more important obligations. Listen, I need to talk to you about something. My heart lifted for a moment. Maybe he wanted to visit. Maybe he was calling just to talk. There's a medical device startup looking for investors. Cutting-edge cardiac monitoring technology. I need $300,000 to secure my position. $300,000. Not how are you feeling? Not I miss you. Just a number. That's significant, Michael. Tell me more about it. He launched into an explanation that sounded rehearsed, heavy on projections, light on connection. By the time he finished, I already knew what I would say, but I asked anyway, will you come for Thanksgiving next week? We could discuss this properly, face to face. There was a pause. I could practically hear him scrolling through his mental calendar. That's going to be tough, Dad. The cardiology conference in Miami is that weekend. But I need an answer on the investment soon. Can you just wire it to my account? I told him I'd think about it, and we said goodbye, the way people do when there's nothing real left to say. The second call came 40 minutes later. My daughter Victoria, the one I'd invested $350,000 in for Yale Law School. She'd become a corporate attorney in Manhattan, married to a hedge fund manager, living in a penthouse on the Upper East Side. Hi, Daddy. Her voice had that particular brightness that meant she wanted something. I have an opportunity I need to discuss with you. I waited. Richard and I are looking at a vacation property in the Hamptons. It would be perfect for entertaining clients. I just need $250,000 for the down payment. $250,000. Another number. Another daughter calling about money instead of calling about me. Victoria. That's a lot of money. Can you come visit soon? We could talk about this together. Maybe after the holidays, Daddy. Things are crazy with the firm right now. But can you let me know about the Hampton property soon? I'll get back to you, I said. And we hung up. I sat in the darkness of my lake house for a long time after that. 2 children, 2 requests, 2 reminders that somewhere along the way, I had become a resource rather than a father. The third call came at 8:15 p.m. Dad? Hi. I hope I'm not calling too late. It was Sarah, my youngest, the one who had surprised us all by choosing nursing school instead of the prestigious paths her siblings had taken. $45,000 for her education, a fraction of what I'd spent on Michael and Victoria. She worked night shifts at a county hospital in Reno, lived in a small apartment with her husband David, a high school history teacher. Something in her voice was different from her siblings. Something genuine. Sarah, it's good to hear from you. How are you doing? I'm good, Dad. Really good. David and I have been talking about some stuff and everything's fine. I just hadn't talked to you in a while, and I wanted to call and see how you were. Are you eating well? Are you taking your blood pressure medication? She wasn't asking for anything. She was asking about me. I couldn't remember the last time one of my children had called just to check on my well-being. Not Michael, not Victoria, but Sarah, the one I had secretly worried about for choosing a modest path, had given me something priceless. Her time, her genuine concern, her love without conditions. We talked for half an hour about her work, about David, about the stray cat they'd adopted, about nothing important and everything that mattered. When we hung up, something crystallized inside me. A decision that had been forming in the shadows of my mind suddenly became clear. I picked up my phone and called my oldest friend, Robert Ashford, my attorney for 35 years. Robert, it's Walter. I need your help with something unusual. He listened as I explained what I wanted to do. He tried to talk me out of it. That was the first thing he did. Walter, you're 64 years old. You're talking about faking a medical crisis and pretending to lose everything. Do you understand the risks? I understand, I said. That's why I need your help to do it safely. We spent 3 hours that night planning. A medical team standing by. Security at a distance. A believable story about a stroke causing cognitive impairment. About bad investments wiping out my fortune. About a man who had lost everything in a single month. Robert made me promise that if anything felt truly dangerous, I would call him immediately. I will, I said. We both knew I probably wouldn't. The transformation took 2 weeks to prepare. First, I needed to look the part. I stopped taking care of myself in the ways that wealth enables. I let my hair grow unkempt. I stopped shaving. I wore clothes from a thrift store in Carson City. Items that hung loose and told a story of decline. Then came the harder part. I had to sell the lie. Robert helped me craft the narrative. A stroke 3 weeks ago that affected my cognitive function. Poor investment decisions in my impaired state. A financial advisor who had taken advantage of my condition. The lake house mortgaged. The company's shares sold at a loss. The accounts drained. The story was designed to be believable because it happens every day. Elderly people suffer medical events, make poor decisions, lose everything. My children would have no reason to doubt it. The hardest part was looking at myself in the mirror. The man who stared back looked 10 years older than he should. His eyes held a desperate quality that wasn't entirely an act, because standing there in thrift store clothes, preparing to test the love of my own children, I felt a desperation that was absolutely real. What if they all failed? What if the test revealed that every one of my children saw me only as a source of money? I pushed the thought away and made my first phone call. Michael, I need to see you. Something's happened. My voice trembled, and the trembling was not entirely an act. I explained about the stroke, about the bad investments, about the financial ruin. I told him I needed help, just temporary, just until I could figure things out. There was a long silence on the other end. Dad, that's a lot to process. When did all this happen? 3 weeks ago. I didn't want to worry you, but I've lost the house, Michael. I've lost almost everything. I just need somewhere to stay for a few days, just until I can make arrangements. Another silence. This one, longer. Dad, I'm leaving for the Miami conference tomorrow morning. Stephanie and I have been planning this for months. I can't just cancel everything. I'm not asking you to cancel. I'm asking for a place to sleep, a couch, anything. I heard him exhale. Heard the sound of someone calculating inconvenience rather than considering compassion. Look, Dad, this really isn't a good time. Stephanie's parents are staying with us this week. We don't have room, but let me see what I can figure out. Can I call you back? He never called back. 3 days later, I stood outside Michael's house in suburban San Diego. The property spread across 2 acres of manicured perfection. I had paid for this house, a gift when he finished his residency. The fountain in the circular driveway, the one that cost $60,000, I had written that check too. I rang the doorbell. I could hear voices inside, laughter, the sounds of a family gathering. Michael opened the door, and I watched his face cycle through recognition, shock, and something that looked remarkably like annoyance. Dad, what are you doing here? I called you 3 days ago. You never called back. I've been sleeping in my car, Michael. I have nowhere else to go. Behind him, I could see Stephanie approaching. His wife, the woman I had welcomed into our family with a $200,000 wedding gift, looked at me the way one might look at an uninvited solicitor. Walter, she said, and the coolness in her voice was unmistakable. This is unexpected. Michael stepped partially outside and pulled the door mostly closed behind him, blocking my view of the interior, blocking me from entering. Dad, listen. I'm sorry about what happened, but this really isn't a good time. We have Stephanie's parents here. We're hosting a dinner party tomorrow. There's no room. I'm not asking for a room, Michael. I'm asking for a couch. For one night, I'm your father. He rubbed the back of his neck, the gesture of a man inconvenienced by someone else's crisis. Let me get you some money, he said. There's a nice hotel about 10 miles from here. You can stay there tonight, and we'll figure something out after the conference. He disappeared inside and returned with a handful of bills. He pressed them into my hand without making eye contact. $150. Dad, I'm really sorry. This is just bad timing. We'll talk after Miami, okay? The door closed. I heard the deadbolt engage. I heard laughter resume inside. I stood on the porch of the house I had bought, holding $150, understanding, for the first time, the true cost of what I had purchased with my success. The flight to New York felt like a journey to another planet. I wore my thrift store clothes and drew stares from fellow passengers. A woman in first class wrinkled her nose as I passed. The flight attendant spoke to me in the careful, slow voice people use with those they've deemed less than. Victoria's building rose 42 stories above Central Park. I had helped with the down payment, a gift of $400,000 when she and Richard got married. The doorman stopped me before I reached the entrance. Can I help you, sir? I'm here to see Victoria Brennan. Victoria Harrison. I'm her father. The doorman's expression said he didn't believe me. He made a call, spoke quietly, then turned back with barely concealed disdain. Mrs. Harrison says she's not available. She suggests you call her office to make an appointment. Please, I said. Just 5 minutes. Tell her it's urgent. Tell her I've lost everything. Another call. Another quiet conversation. The doorman's expression shifted slightly, perhaps to something like pity. She says you can come up. Apartment 4214. The elevator rose in silence. The hallway carpet was thick enough to swallow footsteps. Victoria opened the door before I could knock, and I saw my daughter, truly saw her, for the first time in years. She was wearing a silk blouse that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. Everything about her was curated for success. But her eyes, when she looked at me, held something cold. Daddy, she said, and the word sounded strange in her mouth, like a language she'd forgotten. What's happened to you? I explained everything. The stroke, the bad investments, the financial ruin. I told her I needed help, just temporary shelter, just until I could rebuild something from the ashes of my life. Victoria listened with her arms crossed. When I finished, she didn't move to embrace me. She didn't invite me inside. Daddy, this is a lot. I need to talk to Richard about this. I just need a place to stay, Victoria. A few days. I'm your father. She glanced back into the apartment, where I could see Richard watching from the kitchen, his expression making clear his opinion of the situation. Daddy, Richard doesn't think it's appropriate for you to stay here. We have our routines. We have our space. It would be disruptive. Disruptive. I had become a disruption to my own daughter's life. Let me get you some money. Victoria said, echoing her brother's words. There are shelters downtown that can help you get back on your feet. She returned with an envelope. Inside were 10 crisp $100 bills. $1,000. This should help, she said. I know it's not much, but Richard and I are saving for the Hamptons property. You understand. I looked at my daughter, this woman I had raised, this woman I had given everything to, and I understood perfectly. I had spent $750,000 on her education, her wedding, her home, and when I needed her, she had calculated my worth at $1,000 and a referral to a homeless shelter. Goodbye, Daddy, Victoria said. Please call before you visit next time. The door closed. The lock clicked. I stood alone in the hallway of a building I had helped pay for, holding an envelope of money from a daughter who had chosen convenience over compassion. The bus ride to Reno took 11 hours. I sat in the back, invisible among the other passengers who had no better options. An older man across the aisle shared his sandwich with me without being asked. A young mother traveling with 2 children smiled at me kindly. These strangers showed me more warmth in 11 hours than my 2 eldest children had shown me in a week. Sarah's apartment building was modest, a 3-story walk-up in a working-class neighborhood. The paint was peeling. The stairs creaked, but when Sarah opened the door, I saw something I hadn't seen in weeks. I saw love. Dad? Her face shifted through confusion into alarm, into something that looked like fierce protectiveness. Oh my God, Dad, what happened? Are you okay? Did someone hurt you? She didn't ask why I was there. She didn't glance at her neighbor's windows. She didn't calculate the inconvenience. She simply reached out and pulled me into her arms. Come inside, she said. Come inside right now. You're freezing. The apartment was small. A living room, a tiny kitchen, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. The furniture was secondhand, the decorations simple. But there were photographs everywhere. Pictures of family, pictures of moments that mattered. Sarah guided me to a worn couch that was more comfortable than any furniture in my lake house. Dad, sit down. Tell me what happened. I told her the story, the same story I had told Michael and Victoria. The stroke, the bad investments, the financial ruin. I told her I had nowhere else to go, that I had been sleeping in my car, that I had been turned away by my own children. Sarah listened with tears running down her face. When I finished, she didn't hesitate for a single second. You're staying here, she said. You're staying with us. David and I will sleep on the couch. You're taking our bed. Sarah, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm telling you. She stood up and began gathering blankets. You're my father, Dad. Your family. This is what family does. David came home from work an hour later, a stack of papers under his arm, exhaustion in his eyes. But when he saw me, when Sarah explained the situation, his response was immediate and unhesitating. Mr. Brennan, you're welcome here as long as you need. He shook my hand firmly. Whatever happened, we'll figure it out together. That night, I lay in their bed, a bed I had forced them to surrender, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something besides despair. I felt something that might have been hope. I couldn't sleep, not because of discomfort, but because of what I overheard from the kitchen. Sarah and David thought I was asleep. They were speaking in hushed voices, but the walls were thin, and every word carried. David, we need to talk about money. I know. David's voice was heavy. I've been thinking about it too. The medical bills are going to be significant, Sarah continued. Dad's going to need neurological assessments, rehabilitation therapy, ongoing care. Our insurance won't cover him, and he says he has nothing left. There was a long pause. What about your car? David asked quietly. I've thought about that, Sarah said. The Civic is worth maybe $8,000. It's not much, but it would cover the initial medical evaluations and a few months of therapy. Sarah, that's your only way to get to work. I can take the bus. I can carpool with Melissa from the ER. We'll figure it out. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. David, he came to Michael. He came to Victoria. They both turned him away. Both of them. My brother and sister looked at our father, saw him desperate and broken, and they chose their dinner parties and their vacation homes over their own dad. I heard David exhale heavily. What do they have if they don't have that? Sarah continued. All that money, all that success, and they can't find room in their hearts for the man who gave them everything. What did any of it mean if this is who they became? It meant nothing, David said quietly. It meant nothing at all. I'll call the dealership tomorrow, Sarah said. Get the best price I can. Dad needs us. That's all that matters. I lay in the darkness with tears streaming down my face. My youngest daughter, the one I had given the least to, the one I had secretly worried about for her modest choices, was preparing to sell her only car to help a father she believed had lost everything. I had spent nearly $1 million on Michael and Victoria. They had given me closed doors and referrals to homeless shelters. I had spent $45,000 on Sarah. She was giving me everything she had. The next morning, I made my decision. This test had revealed everything I needed to know. I called Robert before Sarah woke up. It's time, I said. Send the car. At 9 o'clock sharp, a black Mercedes pulled up in front of Sarah's apartment building. Neighbors appeared in windows, curious about the unexpected luxury on their working-class street. Robert stepped out first, followed by his associate and 2 security guards. He carried a leather briefcase that contained documents that would change everything. Sarah answered the door in her scrubs, prepared for her shift at the hospital. She looked at Robert, at the security guards, at me, and confusion crossed her face. Dad? What's going on? I need you to call David, I said. And then we need to talk. 20 minutes later, Sarah and David sat on their worn couch while I stood before them. Robert waited by the door, briefcase in hand. Everything I told you was a lie, I said. Sarah's face went pale. What? I never had a stroke. I never lost my money. Brennan Medical Supply is worth $93 million, and I own every share. I created this entire situation as a test. Sarah stared at me, struggling to process what I was saying. David's expression shifted through confusion into understanding. A test, Sarah repeated. You tested us? I tested all 3 of you. I went to Michael first. I stood on the porch of the house I bought him and told him I had lost everything and needed help. He gave me $150 and closed the door because his in-laws were visiting and he had a dinner party to attend. Sarah's hands had begun to tremble. Then I went to Victoria, I continued. I stood in the building where I helped buy her apartment and told her the same story. She gave me $1,000 and suggested I find a homeless shelter. David put his arm around Sarah. She was crying now, silent tears running down her cheeks. But you, I said, my voice breaking. You didn't ask questions. You didn't calculate inconvenience. You looked at your father in crisis and you chose love. You gave me your bed. You were going to sell your car to pay for my medical care. Sarah looked up at me, tears streaming. Dad, I don't understand. Why would you do this? Because I needed to know, I said. I needed to know if I had raised children who understood what family means. I needed to know if everything I built had any value beyond dollars in a bank account. I needed to know if anyone would love me when I had nothing left to give. Robert stepped forward and opened the briefcase. The documents inside represent a significant restructuring of your father's estate, Robert said, his voice professional but not unkind. The majority of his assets, $63 million, will be placed in a trust for Sarah and her family. This includes full ownership of Brennan Medical Supply. Sarah gasped. What? Michael and Victoria will each receive $10 million, Robert continued. However, these inheritances come with conditions. 100 hours of community service, working with homeless and elderly populations, 1 year of mandatory family therapy, and a genuine, written apology, not to your father, but to you, Sarah, for how they treated him when they believed he had nothing. Sarah was shaking her head. Dad, I don't want their money. I don't need millions of dollars. I just wanted you to be okay. I know, I said. That's exactly why you're receiving it. I crossed the room and knelt before my daughter, taking her hands in mine. You understood something your brother and sister forgot. I said. You understood that wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or real estate or investment portfolios. It's measured in love, in sacrifice, in choosing to be there for people when it costs you something. Sarah threw her arms around me, sobbing. I also need to tell you something else, I said. I overheard you and David last night. I heard you planning to sell your car. I heard everything you said about Michael and Victoria. And I heard the question you asked David. The most important question of all. What does any of it mean if this is who they became? I pulled back and looked at her. It meant nothing, Sarah. All that money I spent on them meant nothing. But the $45,000 I spent on your nursing degree? That taught you how to care for people. That taught you that every life has value. That was the best investment I ever made. Robert cleared his throat. There's one more thing. He pulled out a set of keys. Mr. Brennan has purchased a house in this neighborhood. 4 bedrooms, a yard, room for a family. It's yours. Free and clear. Sarah stared at the keys as if they might disappear. A house? You've earned it, I said. Not through accomplishment or status or climbing corporate ladders. You earned it by being exactly who you are, by being the person who chooses love over convenience, by being the daughter who gives everything she has to help someone she thinks has nothing. David stood and shook my hand, his eyes glistening. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. We don't know what to say. Say you'll help me teach my other children what you already understand, I said. Say you'll help them learn that family isn't about what you can extract from relationships, but what you're willing to give. 3 years later, I sit at Sarah's table for Thanksgiving dinner. The house I bought them has become the center of our family. The walls are covered with photographs. The kitchen smells of turkey and gratitude. The sound of children playing fills the air. Sarah's daughter, Emily, 2 years old now, runs through the house with her cousin Michael Jr. close behind. Michael has changed. The therapy helped. The community service transformed him. He's quieter now, more present. He doesn't check his phone during family dinners anymore. He actually listens. Victoria is here too, helping Sarah in the kitchen. The corporate armor she wore like a second skin has softened. She volunteers at a legal aid clinic now, helping elderly clients protect themselves from financial exploitation. She told me once, after a year of therapy, that she hadn't realized how much she had become the things she used to despise. David carves the turkey while I hold Emily in my lap. She calls me Papa Walter and demands stories about when you were a venture. The dining room is crowded and loud and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. Before we eat, Michael stands. He does this every Thanksgiving now. I want to say something, he begins, his voice thick. 3 years ago, my father stood on my doorstep, broken and desperate, and I closed the door because I had a dinner party to host. I gave him $150 and sent him away because my in-laws were visiting and I didn't want complications. The room is silent, except for Emily playing with a napkin. I've spent 3 years trying to understand how I became that person, Michael continues. How I turned into someone who could look at his own father in crisis and see only inconvenience. And I know now that it happened because I forgot what Dad tried to teach us all along. That success means nothing if you lose your humanity in the process. Victoria nods, tears in her eyes. But Sarah, Michael says, turning to his youngest sister. Sarah never forgot. When Dad showed up at her door with nothing, she gave him everything, not because she had more to give than Victoria and me, but because she understood something we had lost. She understood that family means showing up. Family means sacrifice. Family means love without conditions. He raises his glass. To Sarah, to Dad, to second chances. We all drink. Emily demands juice. The moment dissolves into laughter and chaos, and the beautiful mess of a real family actually being a family. Later, after the dishes are done and the children are asleep, I sit on Sarah's porch watching the stars emerge over the Nevada desert. Sarah joins me with 2 cups of tea. Do you ever regret it? She asks. The test? I think about the question carefully. I regret that it was necessary, I say finally. I regret that I raised 2 children who had to be tested to remember who they were. But I don't regret learning the truth, and I don't regret what came after. Sarah leans her head on my shoulder the way she used to when she was small. Michael's different now, she says. Really different. Victoria too. They learned. I agree. It took pain to teach them, but they learned. Some people never do. We sit in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Dad, Sarah says eventually, I never cared about the money. You know that, right? I would have sold my car. I would have worked double shifts. I would have done anything to help you. I know, I say. That's why you have it. Because you would have done anything. Because you understood that wealth isn't what you accumulate. It's what you're willing to give away. Sarah squeezes my hand. Inside the house, I can hear Michael and Victoria laughing about something. David is playing a quiet song on his guitar. Emily murmurs in her sleep. This is what $93 million could never buy. This is family. This is love. This is what matters when everything else falls away. My name is Walter Brennan. I built an empire worth $93 million. I also nearly lost 3 children because I forgot to teach them what that money was for. But standing in my daughter's doorway, pretending to have nothing, I finally learned the lesson I should have understood all along. Real wealth isn't measured in portfolios or properties or the balance of your accounts. It's measured in the people who would give you their last dollar when they think you have none. It's measured in the arms that hold you when you're broken. It's measured in the children who, when they learn the truth, choose to become better rather than bitter. If this story has moved you, I ask 3 things. Comment below with your own story of family, forgiveness, or second chances. Share this message with someone who needs to remember what truly matters. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about grace, redemption, and the quiet revenge of fathers who refuse to give up on their children. Because sometimes the most important thing a father can do is strip away everything that glitters to reveal what's truly gold. Important disclaimer. The story you have just heard contains elements of fiction created for storytelling and educational purposes. While rooted in universal truths about family, wealth, and love, certain details have been dramatized. If this narrative resonates with you, I hope you'll carry its message forward. And if it doesn't, you're free to seek content that better serves your needs. But whatever you do, don't wait until you've lost everything to discover who would have stayed. May you find the courage to choose love over convenience. May you find the wisdom to value presence over presence. And may you never have to test your family to know they would be there.